Hi everyone, this is Anne. I am going to take a minute and show you guys how to apply murrini. This tutorial is going to be on how to apply two different types of flower murrini. You have your murrini that doesn't have a whole lot of empty space, so it can be used, empty space meaning clear in there. Like this one here, the center is got yellow stamen in it, so it will bloom and not show any of the clear that's in there. These ones can be used flat. They don't need to be pulled down into points, so and they'll still bloom nicely for you. The other kind are the kinds that have a lot of clear in them, like this one. You can kind of, let me see if I can't get my hand so you can see it. You can see right through to the wood there. There's a lot of clear space in there, a lot of spots where if I just were to lay this flat on the bead and want it to bloom, it would not bloom very well. You'd see a lot of the base bead and you wouldn't see a lot of the flower wouldn't look real pretty. So those types we pull down into points on one end. Can't really see that overly well with the bright light in the background, but it is pulled down into a little point at the bottom there. I don't know if you can see that at all. So it looks kind of like a flower already. These type I find require a base of clear between the base bead and the flower so that you can see it bloom a little bit better. If you were to put a base of clear underneath the flat flower, you would find that it's kind of floating in midair on your bead, and that I don't really like that look. So for I'll go through these as I put them on. Okay, so I've got two different types. We're gonna show you how to apply the murrini the way I do them. That doesn't mean it's the only way, it just means it's the way that I do it. And I apply a lot of murrini. I am going to do another tutorial on how to apply butterfly or picture murrini without smearing it. So what you need is, of course, you're going to need whatever color you're going to do your base bead in. You're going to need a high quality clear so that you don't get schmutz on your beautiful murrini. So I only use double helix Zephyr, but that's just because that's my absolute favorite clear. I use Zephyr in my murrini as well. When I do have any clear space, it's always double helix Zephyr. The other thing you're going to need is a hot plate. I just use a cheapo little hot plate that I got from Michael's that warms your coffee, and that is sufficient to warm up your murrini so that they don't snap, crackle, and pop when you try and introduce them to the flame. You're going to need a pair of tweezers. I like these ones. They're easy to use and I can grab it fairly easily. And then you're going to need some sort of flat marver that's kind of small. I love Karina's magic wand. I use this on a daily basis, so this is what I choose to use, but you can use anything that you have that's flat. Now I'm just going to make a real quick base for my murrini, and I'm not going to take the time to make it so this ivory doesn't pop on me apparently. I'm going to just like I say, I'm going to show you two different ways, so I'm going to make two different little demo beads for this, and they are not going to be big. Okay, so when I'm applying the flat murrini, that's what I'm going to start with, is the one that is not pulled to a point. So I've got my base bead, just a little barrel, and you can decorate it with leaves or whatever you want to at this point before you go to put on your murrini. Now I've got my murrini. It's been on the hot plate but I still want to introduce it out here in the flame, at the back of the flame, so that it's getting warmer. This one happens to be red, so I'm going to know when it's nice and warm and happy, because it's going to turn black-ish. So now I'm going to heat up where I want to put my morini to where it's very molten on that bead. And I'm going to push it in, and I'm going to hang it out here in the back of my flame, keeping it warm, because if I don't keep it warm, then that morini could pop off. Even though that bead was nice and molten and the morini was nice and warm, it could still pop off at this point. So if it does, you pick it back up and hope it didn't crack, and if it didn't crack, you put it back on your bead. I'm just going to take this end piece off of my clear. It had a little schmutz on it. Okay, now the key to the way that I do the morini application without getting it too off center is to not mess with it a whole lot. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm gathering up a gather of clear that's about the size of my morini. That's what I'm aiming for. So this was a big morini, and I'm going to put a big glob of clear just on the face of that morini. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. Okay, it's only on the face of that morini. It's not going over the edges. It's just on the face. Now I've got that clear under control. I want it to be, I want to know that it's not flopping all over the place until I'm ready for it to flop all over the place. I'm going to come in on this upper side with the morini facing towards my, or with this side of the morini facing towards my flame, and then I'm going to flip my bead over so that the other side is facing the flame. And I'm going to go back and forth like this a few times until this whole morini and that glob of clear that I have on top of it are nice and molten. Then once I feel like they're molten, I'm going to press it down in the center, and I'm not going to smush it. I'm going to just gently press it, and then I'm going to go around the edges and I'm going to press the edges. Because by heating it that way, I've heated up the bead underneath of it so that it's going to accept that clear and that morini spreading out. And I've also heated then that morini so that it can spread out. Now this is what this one looks like now. I will show you a picture of it in the comments once I've annealed it, just so that you can see. I'm not going to put another one on this one. This one is going to be what it is. The other thing, when you have a morini and you want to put multiple morinis on the same bead, you put each one on individually, and then you go back in and you fill in any open spots by getting your clear super duper molten hot, and your bead wants to stay a little bit cooler so that it's not pulling any of the base bead back out. So you just want your bead cool and your clear glass molten hot, and you push it into any crevices that are there. So I'm just going to show you with this bead, even though there aren't any crevices because I only put one morini on there. But you would have a little crevice in there, and you would heat up that clear, keeping that bead nice and cool, but not too cool. You know, you don't want it to crack on you. But under the flame, and then you're just heating up that clear till it's molten, and then squishing it into the spot where you want that clear to go. Okay, so this bead has one morini, and then it's encased in clear on the back side. So I'll show you this if I can figure out how to do the comments, or I will add it to the end of the video if I can figure out how to do that. Okay, so this bead is done, and I'm just going to put it into the kiln, and I'll be right back to show you the other way. Okay, so the next one we're going to do, I'm going to show you, is it's exactly the same concept of the smushing it down. And like I say, the less I smush it, the happier my morini is. So I tend to try and get it hot enough so that I can do one squish and then pat down around the edges. I know a lot of people that like to heat it up just enough and then pat it down and then heat it up again and then pat it down, and I don't have a whole lot of success with that. I don't know if I get impatient and I want to heat it up more, or what the deal is, but something goes awry with those every time. So this is just, again, my ivory base bead. Now the difference between these, this type of morini application and the one I just showed you, was that I did not put any clear down. At this point, now that I have my base, I would decorate it with any leaves that I wanted, and keeping that bead nice and cool, I'm going to have it underneath my flame, and I'm just going to do the swipe encasing. It doesn't need to be a thick layer of clear. I find it just needs to have a little layer of clear so that you have, I don't know, they bloom better this way, I find. So this is just, I'm going around and I'm just encasing this bead with a very light coat of clear. Now it's done. I'm just going to heat it in. And again, I would have leaves underneath this clear. I could put leaves on top of this clear as well. That looks pretty and gives you multiple dimensions then. Now I have my morini. It's nice and warm on my warming plate, but it's not hot enough to go onto the bead yet, so I'm going to warm it up a little bit in the end of my flame. I'm going to spot heat exactly where I want this morini to go on my bead, and while it's molten, I'm going to stick that little guy in there, and it is sticking up a decent amount, even above that clear, but it looks like it's now part of the inner bead. It doesn't look like it's just hanging out in space. It's down into that core of ivory. Now again, this is a little bit smaller morini, so I don't need quite such a huge glob, but I still need a decent sized glob because it was not a tiny morini. I'm just holding that morini and the bead under the flame, and I'm getting that clear glob on it. So when I put on that glob, it's molten, so I tend to let it kind of get itself cooled off by turning it upside down and letting it hang down instead of get out of control pointing upwards. Okay, so now I've got my morini. It's got a cap, a decent sized cap of clear that's about the same size as it is. Now I'm just going to heat up my bead again because I took it out to show you. I don't want it to crack. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing as I did on that last one. I'm going to point the heat of my torch towards one side, and then I'm going to flip it upside down and heat the other side of this morini. Flip it up, right side, down, up, and you're just trying to heat this whole thing until it's nice and molten. You can see how molten hot that is, and it's hot all the way through. I probably messed this one up because I was showing you, but if you find that you are getting your flower is going one direction or the other direction, at this point you can still try and save it a little bit by heating it. Now that I've got it nice and molten, I'm ready to do my tap down. I tap down once, and then I gently kind of pull down the sides. Okay, if there was a spot that was particularly sticking up, I could reheat and try and tap it down, but it's not necessary. You're going to now encase this. Okay, you can see it. It's almost flush with the bead. It's got a little bit of a lump, and that's fine. Now I'm going to encase this again. If I were going to put multiple flowers onto it, so this one I have another one of these hanging out, so I will show you again real quick so that I can show you how you would encase it. Alright, so my core bead is nice and molten. I'm going to push this little point in there. I'm going to hang it out here to keep it warm so that my morini doesn't just pop off. I'm going to heat up a glob of that clear that's about the same size as this morini. And I'm going to place it just on the face of the morini. I don't want it to go down around the sides. I don't want to smush it on there. Okay, so it's nice and molten, so I have to keep it under control, and flipping it down allows it to get back under control and cool off. So now that I have it under control, I heat one side, heat the other. Heat one side, flip it upside down, heat the other. And I just rock it back and forth like that to keep it so that it doesn't move too much off center. So if it's off center when you start the push, it's just going to get more off center when you complete the push. Okay, and then I'm going to gently tap it down as much in the center as I can, and then around the edges. I guess I should say as centered as I can. You don't want to squish it. You don't want to smash it down there. You just want to gently pat it, and that helps it to open up, and then by patting around the edges, that helps it to complete its bloom. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you so you can see that there's a divot right in there. I want to make sure that I've got my clear nice and molten. I'm going to push it in there. I'm going to come to the other side where that V is, and I'm going to push my molten clear glass in there. And around the flower, if there's any spots of that clear that wasn't touching the ivory, I want to make sure that there is some clear there. So I've got my clear nice and molten, and I'm going around my flower and I'm smushing it in there, and I'm finding any crevices, any V's. You want to go to the V's first and get that nice hot molten clear on there. Okay, so this is now a nice bead, and it's not rounded. Now I need to shape it. In order to shape it, when you have a morini on there, and you don't want to put it into a bead roller until you have kind of gotten your shape already a little bit. So what I do is I find a spot, I heat it, I gently press it on my marver, and I go around my whole bead, and I do this. Okay, and this is just gently shaping it without skewing my morini at all. Okay, when you're shaping your morini beads, you want to let that core bead get nice and cool, and you want to just shape the outer layer of the clear that you have on there. Okay, so I heat it just so the clear is warm, and then I can roll it a little bit, heat it, press it, and roll it a little bit. But I don't want those morini to get skewed, so I'm just doing it gently. And I can go around this bead 10 times if I wanted to, if I needed to. Now I can keep it warm, and I didn't take out my, here it is, my shaper. Okay, so I can use a bead roller now, and I'm trying to just keep that clear hot. Okay, so I'm going to heat up just that outer layer of clear because I don't want that inner layer to get all skewed up. So I can gently heat up that clear. And usually you're just trying to round out the edges there. At least that's what I find. Okay, so I'm heating up more that edge of the clear as opposed to the center of my bead. Alright, so there you go. That's that little guy. He's got 2 morini on him. Usually on this type of bead I would do 3, but since it's just a demo bead, I just did 2. 3 tends to make it stay more even, so That's why I do 3. But on a focal bead or bead that is going to be a different size, you can add as many as your little heart desires. Alright, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks, and look for the next one, which is on applying picture morini.